Welcome everyone to another version of Raising Energy Awareness. And we've got three speakers. Well, I'm going to chair the session tonight, but I'm going to give a quick demonstration on what I've been doing about energy awareness and the circular economy. And one of the reasons why we came in tonight was because the Irish Times have written a series of articles on the Amber Alerts and the issues regarding energy in Ireland. So Barry O'Halloran and Kevin O'Sullivan have both been involved, and I'd like to welcome everyone to this webinar this evening. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to speak about establishing voluntary targets in manufacturing sites in Ireland. So I'll quickly share on this, and then I'm going to ask Jerry Sweeney to speak, and then Donal Daly will speak as well. We had hoped for another speaker, but we'll see if he rocks up. He hasn't answered his phone. So establishing voluntary targets in manufacturing sites in Ireland is what I've been looking at for the last, since March. I've been working on the Circulara project, which is part funded by the Department of Environment, Climate Change and Communication, the EPA, and EIT Climate Kick. So it's the first cross-sectoral industry-led innovation network that's looking at accelerating the net zero carbon circular economy in Ireland using systems innovation and to embed circularity in Irish industry. So what does that mean? So it's the national platform for circular manufacturing. It's €4.5 million of public-private partnership, and it's to accelerate circular economy and to decarbonise manufacturing in Ireland. Our role in Irish manufacturing research is to demystify, de-risk and deliver circular economy concepts through innovation and of demo pilots between the various different network members. So €1.5 million of this is for innovation. And the last round, 500,000, is going to be spent at the end of this month, and people are frantically writing in their proposals at the minute. We've currently got 37 members. So there's 27 manufacturing sites, there's 5 startups, and we've got 5 more coming along. We have 8 support industries. So for example, Gannon Eco are in Westmeath, and they take vehicle glass, so windscreens and all that type of stuff, and they crush it up and they use it for something else. We're in 21 of the 31 local authority jurisdictions, and these are where they're located. So for me, with Circulara, I'm looking at energy, water and materials. We're doing a carbon estimation. Sometimes we're looking at life cycle analysis, that's an extra fee. But one of the things that does strike me is we still have a growth mentality, even though we're going to decarbonise. So there is a little quandary when we have issues like Amber Alerts, which Jerry will go and he'll speak about that. So what Circulara is trying to do is raise awareness. Here I am. We're sharing knowledge. So the website circulara.ie has a knowledge hub, a library of sorts. We're capacity building within the industries and with whoever else wants to engage. So there's a number of events that are free to other people. And we spoke about the demonstrator sites and the new ventures, and it's all about the ecosystem collaboration of what one man's waste is another man's treasure. That's what circular economy is really about. So thank you, and you can get in contact with me later. So I'm going to stop share and I'm going to segue into Jerry Sweeney. And I'll switch off my camera and I'll let Jerry has his on, and I'll mute. Thank you, Jerry. Jerry, if you want to unmute.
Yeah, thanks, Shirley. Can everybody confirm that I've managed to share my screen?
It's fine, Jerry, I can see it fine.
I hope I'm sharing the right screen. Okay, so smart grid dashboard. Is that visible on the screen there, Shane, please?
Yes, it's
Great.
Jerry.
Thanks. Okay, so my name is Jerry Sweeney, and I'm the Chief Executive of Cork Internet Exchange, which is a data center. And for the last 2 months, we've gotten a very bad, data centers in general have gotten a very bad rap for our contribution to all things carbon. While we are an industry that burns a lot of electricity, I don't think the situation is as simple as it is portrayed in the media. I have been campaigning for a number of years, going back 10 or 12 years, for a particular initiative, and I've been campaigning very hard for the last 18 months. And Shirley and Donal, have come on board and helped me with this issue to gain traction and to get people to understand it. And it has to do with how we consume and when we consume electricity. So what I'm going to do, I don't have a slide deck, but I'm going to talk you through 2 websites that are available on the public internet. One is the EirGrid Smart Grid Dashboard, and the information contained in it is really interesting. I don't know why, but the amount of information available in it is a lot less than it was 6 months ago. During an Amber Alert in January, I created a video which is available through my LinkedIn account if you want to track it down. And for the 2.5 hours of the Amber Alert, I actually created a video within the data center, and I described what was happening in the country, what we were doing to react to it. And I used the Smart Grid dashboard extensively during that time. If you go to the Smart Grid dashboard, so I can only work with what information is available on it today. It's a lot less than what it used to be. So if I go to the Smart Grid dashboard and just go straight to the home page, what I see is the situation currently occurring in this country. The blue line, this is the overview page. The blue line is the current wind generation, and the orange line, or some people might see it as brown, is the system demand. So that's the amount of electricity that we're burning. Now, the carbon content of the electricity that we're burning can be seen as the difference between the blue line and the orange line. Now, we do have some hydroelectric generation as well, and some carbon, some fossil fuel based production like natural gas is probably not as carbon intensive as, say, burning coal. So there are differences. But what I want you to notice is, especially in the last 24 hours, where we had relatively high wind during the night and low wind during the day, that during the day, the carbon content is much higher. So during the night, I see Donal Kissane has joined us. That's great. So during the night, the wind was quite high, and our carbon content in our electricity was very low. It's now 7 p.m. in the evening, and we're very, very close to the peak for today. And you can see, that the carbon content right now is incredibly high. So if you can move your load, to a time when the wind is blowing and the demand is low, then you can actually create a market for renewable energy, and you can prevent curtailment, because occasionally we do actually curtail wind farms. Now, in order to get, so I have a number of tabs across the screen there open, so I'm going to describe it in terms of those tabs. So the second website to understand what's going on the grid, is this is the EirGrid Smart Grid website. Is fantastic for telling you what's going on the electrical market, but the single energy market operator is the financial part of the system. So that tells you the money that's involved, and who's trading, or not who's trading, but what electricity is trading for. And this actually is the market result for October the 22nd, which is tomorrow, and it tells you what the price of electricity is going to be on the wholesale market tomorrow. So during the day, there will be further auctions as you get closer and closer to the market. Then the generators and the suppliers trade, and each auction has somewhat different pricing depending upon what the forecasts are. But what we're looking at here is the day ahead market. So I want to show you 2 days in particular. I'm going to move this out of my own way here. So the 2 days that I have chosen to show you are the 30th of September. And on the 30th of September, in the day ahead market, the price of electricity went to zero. The price of wholesale electricity went to zero at 2 a.m. in the morning and stayed almost at zero until 4 a.m. So clearly, in the wholesale market, at least, if you bought electricity at that time, okay, you would have gotten it very inexpensively. On occasions, the price of electricity has gone negative. I want to point out something that might help you to understand this graph a little bit better. This is the number of euros per megawatt hour that are paid on the wholesale market for electricity. Now, in order to deliver that electricity to your house, there are some charges for transmission and distribution, and your electrical retailer will make a profit, hopefully, for them. But to try and convert this into a price that you will understand, this is euros per megawatt hour. So on the sample point that I've picked up there, if we translate that into cents per kilowatt hour, that's 23.5 cents. Now, 23.5 cents plus maybe 5 cents for transmission, distribution, and so on, okay, is 28.5 cents. That is more than most people pay for electricity at the moment. I know prices are going up, but even still. And what that means, okay, is that people are not exposed to that pricing. Most tariffs are single tariffs, and then you have some people with night rate, but most people are not exposed to that. And I just want to show you the huge variation in electricity price during the day. That was a particularly spectacular day, and it was on the 30th of September, so it was only 3 weeks ago. So let's look at what was happening on the grid at that time. Now, what's of interest at that moment, okay, is the orange line here is the predicted wind on that day. And what was happening, okay, was during that night, the orange line predicted that there would be 4 gigawatts of electricity generated by wind. And that's what caused the price of electricity to collapse to zero. Wind is a price taker. And Donal Kissane might be able to explain better what happens on the generation side. But some of the guys, I presume, okay, that were running generation plants didn't want to shut them down during the night. So this is a presumption of mine, okay? So they bid in at zero and took the price to zero in order to stay in the market. What I want you to notice is that the blue line is the actual wind generation. So the wind generation on the night was lower. So I'm assuming, okay, that the intraday markets, okay, would have actually had a higher price for electricity at those times. Point I'm trying to get across, 2 points I'm trying to get across, is that people assume that the price of electricity is constant, and it's not. It varies on a 15-minute by 15-minute basis throughout the day. And people assume, okay, that all units of electricity contain the same amount of carbon, and that's not true. When you burn electricity is incredibly important in terms of reducing the carbon content on that. I want to take you to another day and describe a different market. So unfortunately, this is the kind of day that we've been having a lot recently. We will look at the wind on this day, and it was quite low. But what is horrific about this is that the price of electricity at 6 p.m. that evening, okay, went to 43.4 cents per kilowatt hour on the wholesale market, and that would have ended up, okay, being about 50 cents per kilowatt hour if it was given to a retail customer. And the lowest electricity went to that day, okay, it was 16 cents, which would have been about 21 cents, okay, to a customer. Now, what's been happening is that the price of gas from February to, the price of gas in Europe from February to October has increased by 500%. And as a result of the gas price increasing, a significant amount of our production of electricity comes from gas. The wholesale price for electricity has gone up by about 150% to 200%. So it's between 2 and 3 times what it cost in February. So when people say that they have been exposed to a price increase, you know, most of the electrical suppliers have had a price increase of 10% or 20%, then we are in a denial kind of situation from a price perspective. However, this evening is not focused on the price of electricity, although that is a problem and is likely to be a problem for a while. And that problem, if we try and reduce our usage, the reason it's a problem is because the amount of gas available in the market is low. And if the gas is to stay low, and if we are going to try and decarbonize, then coal, gas and oil, okay, need to be taken out of the system. So we can assume that we're in for more expensive pricing. Let's look what was happening in the market on that day. So at the time of the peak, okay, when the price went to 50 cents almost a kilowatt hour, the forecast wind was predicted to be 600 megawatts, and in fact, okay, it was only 212 megawatts. So and the demand was reasonably high on that time. So what would I like to see happen? I would like to see people be aware of this. I would like to see people be aware that the price is changing and that the carbon content of the electricity is changing. I think it will be a while, okay, before we get smart metering that actually exposes people to these swings. But I think, you know, we've seen it with COVID-19. People have been willing to take on you know, they've been looking at the news at 6 o'clock in the evening and they've been saying, okay, the numbers are up, the numbers are down, we need to modify our behavior. I think it would be very useful if the weather forecast contained information, just like we do in the summer with the pollen count, and just said, look, we're facing an evening, okay, of low wind, the carbon content is going to be high and the wholesale electricity price is going to be high. At don't put on your clothes dryer until after 11 p.m. Please don't run your dishwasher. Put your car to charge, okay, at 1 o'clock in the morning. And there are times like the time we saw the electricity price go to zero when there was a high degree of wind expected, where they may ask you, okay, to charge your electric vehicle, for example. So in summary, people are not aware that the price of electricity is varying. I would like to see them become aware of that. And when you look at the price of electricity on the wholesale market is almost an analogy, an analog for the carbon content. So if you consume your electricity when it's cheap, you are consuming your electricity when it's got a low carbon content. My ask is that people be made aware of that through the weather forecast or whatever. And this is what Donal Daly has done a fantastic job, and he's going to talk to you about what he's been doing to get this information into the public domain. I'm going to stop sharing and hand over, maybe hand back to Shirley or hand over to Donal, whichever is more appropriate.
You can hand back to me because then I can introduce.
There you go. Thanks.
Thank you, Jerry. And I'm looking for some Q&A because it's a very interesting topic. I'm going to move swiftly on. We have two Donals lined up. Donal Kissane is with Gas Networks Ireland, and he's going to segue in from your high price of gas, and he'll speak about that. So Donal, over to you. I'm going to mute myself and you can rock on.
Okay, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Can hear you perfectly. Thanks, Donal.
Good. We have the technology working anyway. No, I just maybe just to follow on from Jerry's excellent introduction there, or kind of summary there. I suppose we're all, everyone in this group is very interested in, you know, empowering citizens ourselves to be aware and to be more energy efficient. So I suppose there are a lot of industries already doing that, including you know, Jerry's company CIX, who are part of, you know, the demand side management. But I think what Jerry and Donal Daly and Shirley are trying to do here is trying to bring that down to you know, the individual energy consumer. So I think all information is very useful, and making people aware is highly, you know, it's required. People just aren't aware of how energy markets work. So I suppose just to, you know, a couple of comments there really. You know, today, you know, we have I was looking at it earlier. Gas is well, renewables are about 43%. Gas is about 32%. Coal is about 12% of our generation today. So that's why today the carbon intensity of generation in Ireland is high. Fossil fuels, gas and coal, but particularly coal. Coal is twice as carbon intensive as gas. I suppose the good news is, you know, well, the bad news is gas prices have increased, carbon has increased. My own view is that trend is only going to go up. There will be spikes, and we're at a spike at the moment. I've no doubt that spike will come down. You know, the traders there, former colleagues there in our trading arm in Bord Gáis Energy, I was talking to them there yesterday. They were saying that, you know, storage is full in Europe now. You will now see gas prices, wholesale gas prices come down, and that will mean the wholesale price of electricity will come down. I suppose, you know, like most people in the industry, we kind of say, well, we'll believe it when we see it, but that seems to be, we seem to have reached the peak now, and we will come down. So that's the good news, Jerry. And then obviously the carbon intensity, coal in the mix is very bad because you know, it's been phased out all over Europe. We're in a particularly anomalous situation here in Ireland, in that two of our largest gas generators are off on our forced outages at the moment. They will be back in November, and then you will see coal come off the system, and even on low wind days, the carbon intensity should not be as high. Again, you know, that's the theory, and we hope that'll happen. On curtailment, so I think Jerry mentioned that wind is curtailed. Wind is curtailed an awful lot of the time. In 2020, 13% of all wind generated was curtailed. That's 1,400 gigawatt hours of electricity was curtailed down. So if you put that in context, if you take 8,700 hours of the year, leveling it out over the year, that's 160 megawatts for every hour of 2020. Wind was curtailed down. So we need to do something about that. Energy storage is the solution. We're not here to talk about it today, but I'm particularly interested in the whole concept of, you know, decarbonized gases, including green hydrogen. What that is, curtailment is not a problem. Curtailment is an opportunity, I believe. We could actually convert that into green hydrogen. We could run the gas turbines, those backup gas turbines, on zero carbon renewable green hydrogen if we so chose to do so. And I think that is the direction of policy. I suppose on the whole idea of domestic or individual demand side response, I have a smart meter, and I signed up there about 6 months ago to a smart tariff. So today I'm incentivized. So before I went onto this tariff, I'm on one with it's with Energia, and I paid 19 cents a kilowatt hour. I've now got 3 tariffs. I pay 10 cents during the night. I pay 19 cents only 2 hours of the day, and 16 cents from 7 in the morning until 5. And then from 5 to 7, I'm on the 19, 5 to 7 p.m. And then from 7 p.m. until I think it's 10 o'clock, I'm on the 16 cents, and then I'm back down to the 10, 11 cent. So I'm incentivized today via a smart meter to actually reduce my demand between that peak. We need more of that, I believe. We need to roll out smart meters, and then people need to be made aware of these time of day tariffs. So the reason I'm mentioning that is if you Google it, if you continue to use electricity between those 2 hours, between 5 and 7 p.m., 5 p.m. and 7 p.m., you actually could be worse off. You could actually end up paying more than having a flat tariff. So I think the time of day tariffs are very good, provided you actually use them the way they're meant to be used. If you just sign up for a time of day tariff and continue to consume electricity, you will probably end up paying more. So I think that's a key thing that people need to be aware of, and I think electricity suppliers should make people aware. So they were the only things I was going to say. I mean, I think this idea of empowering the citizen, making people aware, and Kevin O'Sullivan had an article there in the Irish Times. He said, because of all these amber alerts, we need an effort for energy, and I thought that was a very good suggestion. So I think what Jerry and Shirley and Donal and Blonid are doing is the start of that process. Where people, the way we were aware of the numbers for COVID-19 over the last 18 months, people could be made aware of the deteriorating situation vis-a-vis electricity generation capacity. So I'm going to leave it at that. We could talk for hours, but there were just a few points I wanted to make.
Thank you, Donal. I'm going to, we'll move swiftly on to Donal Daly, who has launched his carbon app yesterday, which is really good news. And then we'll have a Q&A with all the panelists. So over to you, Donal Daly. And thank you, Donal Kissane.
Thank you.
So, just trying to get my screen share working here properly. 2 seconds. Okay, are we good? Can we see that? Thank you. So my interest in this has kind of started from back in the energy side of this, I suppose, particularly early in the year. I spoke to Jerry Sweeney and we talked about some things, and Jerry has spoken well about the air grid thing and the need to flatten the curve of usage as opposed to reduce our usage, if you like. That's been the focus. And my interest has been the carbon generally and how that works. And what I learned speaking to Jerry was, as he kind of outlined now, and I happen to have the EirGrid website screenshot that I took back in the day, which is as you get into that kind of over 4,500 megawatts, you're actually getting into dirty energy, and people turn on the diesel generators and the coal burners and so on. Now, I was interested in that from a carbon point of view, more so than an energy point of view, but as Jerry says, there's almost a one-to-one correlation. And Jerry's point, as he well articulated just earlier, was, well, can we make people aware of the problem, and they should do something about it and understand that between 4:30 and say 7:30, or between 5 and 7, and as Donal Kissane said, he pays more between 5 and 7, which makes sense. The world pays more in carbon too. That's what's really important. So as we get into that, what I call the dirty energy area between kind of 4:30 and 7 p.m., the diesel generators get turned on, the coal burners get turned on. That's a bad thing. So how can we help people solve that problem? As part of the overall carbon problem, the energy problem is one piece. And of course, in Ireland, we've got transport, we've got agriculture, we've got manufacturing, we've got energy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those in a moment also. But having spoken to Jerry, I went and looked at my background in software. I went and looked at the EirGrid website and said, we can build a little quick application that goes to the cloud, does some analysis, processes the stuff, posts it to Twitter and sends it to the phone. And any of you who haven't done so, Carbon Watch IE is a free Twitter application that posts every couple of days. And what it does is it looks at what's going on EirGrid, and it points out the key things like, and it's, I mean, Jerry and I weren't synced up on this, so it's interesting that we kind of are, right? But what the forecasted usage is and what it is. And then, as it turns out, today, right, I just snapped these screens just maybe half an hour ago, right? So it talked about the forecasted power for Thursday. And then on the right here, it talks about the usage. And what's interesting, if I just move some of this stuff out of the way here, what's interesting, and Donal Kissane talked about this, it's almost as if we were joined up, right? So the renewable energy, 42%, 873 tons, and coal at just 11%, right? Nearly 4 million tons, right? So what you use matters. And as you can see on the kind of chart on the right, when you use, as Jerry said earlier, also matters. So my simple solution at that point in time was, it would be great to have it on the weather forecast. It would be great if we broadcast it. It would be great if everyone knew about it. But, you know, Twitter's there right now. So today, and since back then in, I think it was February, March timeframe, this posts a couple of times a day. It talks about what's going to happen tomorrow. It talks about what happened yesterday. It will occasionally do a summary of what the usage was last week. And it's just about awareness. And people have tweeted back to Carbon Watch Ireland occasionally saying, I turned my dishwasher on, it's 10 o'clock at night because you told me not to do it at 5 o'clock when I got home. So that's a good thing. And that helps flatten the energy. And it also helps with the carbon emissions. The other thing that's happened, as you kind of learn through this, is people's awareness grows generally, right? In most domestic households, 11% of the electricity you use is from those vampire devices that you leave on. You know, the video machine you left on when you had one of those, and you start thinking about, we can use less, but we can flatten. So when we presented this, and Jerry and Shirley kindly asked me to talk about it, and I presented this, and someone on the call back then said, well, we'd like to be able to measure our carbon footprint generally. So that was kind of the kind of next phase of this. What's my number? What's my carbon number? And I said to all the assembled masses, and I made a commitment at the time, which I had to live up to, which is I'd go build an app. And as Shirley said, that was officially launched yesterday. And you can go to futureplanet.com/app, and you can download that for Apple or for Android. It has kind of sneaked out a little bit over the past few months, and there's been hundreds of folks that have gone through this, and it's really interesting to see, and we'll release some analysis on what people are actually doing. But as far as I know, and we're kind of proud about the fact, this is our contribution to Ireland's reduction in carbon emissions, and also it'll talk about what we do from an energy point of view. But as far as I know, it's the only one that's targeted, that's designed and tailored specifically for Ireland, because that's the planet that we care about, if you like. So that was that piece, and then the next piece that kind of comes from this, which is where I had kind of started my journey originally in the world that I know, which is kind of enterprise, large enterprises. What do large enterprises do? So what about my company? Because companies are, and if you think about it, companies are made up of individuals, and companies represent an awful lot of the emissions, but we don't think about it necessarily in the company as a personal entity. So I'm going to think about, what can a company do? So in the same way that you go through your journey from a personal point of view for your app, on a personal point of view for your energy usage, a company will go through the same journey. And with any of the key things that people care about, whether it's how they design their products from a circularity point of view, back to Shirley's point, what they do around single-use plastics, what they do around their carbon emissions, some people on the call here will know about their energy usage and their scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, how they do that. It starts with, a benchmark, and then they figure out where they're trying to get to. And as they do that, they learn some stuff. There's some community stuff. My background is in AI, so it has a big role to play here. And to kind of bake this into a platform where it has some advisory built into the software can help people do this. There is so much great knowledge available, but it's really big. It's a planet-sized problem, because people need to understand what they have to do, how they do it, what everyone's role is, and at the end, how do they measure and report on what happens. And I believe that software has a role to play so that you can get that sustainable growth and then start it all over again. Yesterday, in addition to the app launch, we also launched the platform, which does things like assess where you are. In this particular case, it's about how you go after the kind of circular economy to have zero waste. There's a enormous amount of knowledge built into the system that helps you assess where you are from that point of view. And in this case, it's about waste. It can be about your energy usage. It can be about, as I said, single plastics as an example. Figures out where you are, and then builds for you automatically a transformation plan. So now I know where you are. I have access to all the world's knowledge and research and all that kind of stuff. So now I can tell you what you should do next. And then when you do it, I can help you go and kind of measure and tell you how you're doing against it, right? So there's so many people who've got such good intentions about what they want to do. And in organizations, it's hard to do it and get everyone involved. So that's kind of what we're trying to help people do. In this particular session, it's about how I know when I'm using my energy, and that goes back to the Twitter app, what I use myself in my home, and that goes back to, that's my energy and my transport and my food and my clothing. As I kind of step through it, they're the various things that we do to try and reduce emissions and to try and balance our energy usage so we reduce emissions. It's all part of the same journey. So with that, I will hand back to Shirley.
Thank you, Donal, and well done on delivering. So we have three questions to date, and I'm going to ask them as they came in order, but please feel free to add any more. So Jerry Murphy asked, Jerry, if we are subject to the vagaries of wind supply and we have a coast of tidal supply, should we be investing in more wind generation or spending more to efficiently harvest tidal and wave energy? Over to you, Jerry.
Okay, so the first thing I'd like to say is that I worked in 1979, so you have a fair idea what age I am now, as a third-year student in UCC electrical engineering in wind energy design. And my final year project in electrical engineering in UCC was around grid synchronous inversion, which could be interpreted as connecting wind turbines to the grid. And I've had a huge interest for 40 years now in all forms of renewable energy and storage. So even though my day job is managing director of a data center, first of all, there's a high energy content in doing that, as well as an IT content. But I do have good credentials in the area of energy and specifically in renewable energy. I don't believe that tidal energy is a very well developed technology. In a lock up in the north, I think it's Strangford Lock, if I remember it correctly, there was a pilot project up there. I think that has been stopped. I'm not sure, but it was a very, very small project. I don't believe it's working in a good way. So I think tidal and wave energy are unproven technologies. I'm not aware of any scale projects that are out there. The two renewables that are working really, really well, we've had hydro for a long time, but there's a limited number of places you can do it. In places like Norway, they do very well. In Ireland, we've got wind and we've got solar, and I think we need to add more solar. One of the nice things about solar is that it tends to be out of sync with wind, and it's also daylight. So I think we should add that. But I think the opportunities for tidal and wave are not there because the technology isn't adequate yet. Does that make sense?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jerry. Sorry, I was trying to tweet as well as well as host. Yeah, there's a couple. There's a big tidal one there in France near is it Saint-Malo? And I know the Orkneys were doing quite a lot. But yeah, I think you're right. And I think also there's a lot of, so I was working with a crowd from Maine in the US, so I'm just trying to think of their name. You know, there's certain issues with tide that makes it a lot more complicated. So yeah, thank you, Jerry Murphy, for that question. But yeah, I do think, it's a complicated issue, and we need all hands on deck, I suppose, to a certain degree. Tom Delahunty has said, can the panel expand on the potential for companies to store electricity as a way to shift the consumption point from the grid? Is there a size of storage tipping point for that to be viable? And I know Jerry Sweeney has the answer to this. But I'll let the two Donals speak as well. So do you want to kick off, Jerry, or do you want to let one of the Donals start?
I'm happy to let either of the Donals comment on it. That would be great. I have views as well, and I'll add them afterwards if you like.
Yeah.
I think storage would be great if it works, but I think Jerry Sweeney knows 100 million times more than I do, so I'm not going to say any more.
Thanks, Donal. And Donal Kissane?
Yeah, look, I think like one of the things we need to make intermittent renewables work is storage, and storage at scale. So I think there will be a lot of storage and solutions implemented over the next 10 years. And I know EirGrid have a number of working groups actively investigating that. So I mean, battery storage is very promising, particularly for the first level response. Batteries are very fast response. And they sit there, they can pick up the load very quickly. That's the good news. The bad news is, however, after an hour, they are a number of hours, depending on what the size they are, they have to be recharged. So a 1 megawatt hour battery, which is a large battery system, is exactly that, 1 megawatt for 1 hour. After 1 hour, you need something else. So what's being developed now, and ESB and others are looking at it, are hybrid systems where you have batteries, and then for the first hour, for the first level response, then that allows you to start up an open cycle gas turbine, and then that will take the second and third level of frequency response or backup. So that seems to be the way that it's going. But the big thing there is you can't run those gas turbines on fossil fuels and have a decarbonized energy system. So you need to run them on renewables, renewable gases.
Thanks, Donal. I'll cut in before I let Jerry answer. I heard a presentation from Green Generation last week. Teresa, I can't think, is it Patton's or second now, in Kildare, and they're funded through they're supported through GNI about the whole, they're using anaerobic digestion to develop green gas. So that's of interest. And over to you, Jerry.
Okay, so when I do the maths on all of this, none of it stacks up for me. Shirley, and when you were talking earlier on, you were saying, we still have a growth mentality. I think every politician is working on the basis of 3% compounding growth. And if you do the math of 3% compounding growth, okay, then it doesn't take very long, maybe another 100 years, okay, before we're all living kind of 3-story high on every piece of land on the planet. So it's not going to happen. So Albert Einstein said the greatest deficiency in the human brain is the inability to understand the exponential function. So I suppose what I'm saying is that we kind of need to get into some kind of a circular situation. It looks like population isn't growing anymore. I know I was asked about batteries, and I'm kind of going to get there. The problem with most battery technologies is they involve mining. So if you take a look at lithium batteries, which are kind of what people are talking about now at the moment. So if you live in the United States, you can put in your order for delivery in 3 years, a year and a half's time, for a Tesla Megapack. They're not delivering them in Europe yet, at least not in small quantities. You've got to put in a big order or whatever. And you're looking at 1.2, we'll say 1 million euros for a Megapack for 3 megawatt hours. and there's an 18-month delivery period on them. But they involve a hell of a lot of mining and the use of a huge number of resources. And I cannot see that lithium-ion batteries have a future. I can see life-flow batteries. I'm not a chemist, but lithium iron oxide or whatever it's called. Batteries are heavier and are cheaper to make. You don't use as many materials, so there's a possibility. There are a couple of companies working on batteries. There's a guy called Dr. Donal Kissane, Dr. Sadaway anyway, I can't remember his first name, and he founded a company called Ambri in the East Coast US, and he's got a very good saying: if you want a battery to be dirt cheap, you have to make it from dirt. So he's making these batteries in this company called Ambri. There's another company that came to the fore recently, making batteries made out of rust. They basically oxidize iron and then deoxidize it as a way of generating and storing energy, and they're called, I can't remember. It's a short
Redox.
Yeah, that might be the technology. Yeah, but I can't remember the name of the battery company. It's a 4-letter word like flow, something like that. But anyway, the Form, F-O-R-M, Form Energy. So Ambri and Form are kind of developing that kind of technology, but we do not have grid scale battery storage technology. There is no technology in existence that makes any sense. And I'm not even talking about from a cost perspective. None of them make any sense, okay, from a mining perspective. We just don't have the materials. There's a lot of aluminium in the world, there's a lot of iron in the world, but there isn't a whole pile of lithium, and there isn't a whole pile of some of the other metals that are used in those. So I'm skeptical about batteries. I just got planning permission, okay, to build a lean-to attachment onto our building here for 120 kilowatts of solar. By the time you take out the nighttime and the inefficiencies in the day, it doesn't work. Okay, that's only going to give me 25 kilowatts. But underneath it, okay, I have the ability to store 4 or 5 containers of batteries. And I've been looking at what's available, and I don't need to re-export. I can just basically buy my electricity at night and consume it during the day. And I can't make it cost effective. And even if I look at it from, and then if I go and look at it from an from a planet sustainability point of view, it kind of doesn't make sense. And then if I go and like I know Donal is pushing the hydrogen idea, and a lot of people that are pushing hydrogen are working on the basis that we're wasting 13% of our electricity. So we just take that electricity, which is free electricity, and we pump it into generating hydrogen. And I have a problem with that as well, because in order to fund more wind energy, we need to we need to create a market for wind energy that's 24. Like, to me, the sin is that we're not paying the wind farms for that 13.5%. So we're using refit tariffs, and I don't understand how that works in the sense that it ends up on my PSO levy and whatever. But the bottom line is, wind farms are being curtailed, but what we need to do is move our load. Now, you can say, well, if you get battery storage, or if you get long-term storage with hydrogen, or if you use compressed air, okay, you can move the load. I'm saying, yeah, sure, but they're all expensive and they all involve destroying the planet a little bit more. But why don't we tell people, okay, just cut down on your consumption of electricity this evening, or tomorrow morning between 7:30 and 9. It's okay what you burn or what you do, okay, at 2 o'clock in the morning. You're creating a market. So what I would like to see is flatten the curve in terms of usage, which will flatten the curve in terms of price. And that will enable us, okay, to get big into deploying more wind. We have to deploy more wind. And we either have to move its usage, or we have to store the energy and use it. I don't like battery storage, and I have a problem, because my problem with hydrogen is the round trip efficiency. So I've had discussions with Donal on this before. Let's assume, for topic of conversation, Donal will argue with this, but let's assume that by the time you create it and put it back through a gas turbine, you get 30% efficiency. Well, that means that 70% of it has gone up the spout. If somebody, now where I do see an opportunity actually is in motor vehicle charging. Shane Hartigan, by the way, I have to thank him for organizing this event in terms of using his facilities. Shane is a professional event organizer, and he's given up of his time free of charge, okay, for this event, and I thank him for doing so, and I thank him for putting up with us amateurs, well, for one amateur at least. And what Shane has an electric car, and we were talking about this, and he's got a huge amount of intelligence in that car. He can tell it, okay, when to charge, when not to charge. What Shane needs to do, what that car needs to do though, is it needs to be aware of the price of electricity. So Donal Kissane said that he's exposed to the market pricing. Well, we need to link Donal Kissane's smart meter to Shane Hartigan's car, and then the car decide, whoa, a minute now. My price of electricity, okay, is a little bit higher than I want it to be, okay, and I don't need to go anywhere tomorrow, or I have 200 kilometers in my car. I'm not going to charge tonight because tonight is a bad night to charge, and then it's available the following night. So I think what I'd like to do, first of all, so I have an agenda, and the agenda kind of ends up, okay, we need batteries, you know, if we can make them cheaply, that's fine. And I hate to say this, but we're probably going to need some nuclear as well. There's my understanding is that the planet has lost an opportunity with thorium reactors. We developed reactors based on the stuff they use in bombs, uranium, because we needed to develop bombs. If they had ignored uranium and developed thorium, then we would have a much safer nuclear industry. And I believe there's some work going on thorium reactors, which are tiny reactors. Well, tiny in the sense of 500 megawatts, plenty big enough for this country. I understand that the French have just gone ahead and set up a whole load of, they're going to build more nuclear power plants. And I actually, provided they're safe, I think that's a very good idea because they are carbon free. And I'm aware of massive projects to improve renewables and do grid scale interconnects, okay, between countries. There is one of my favorites in history is a guy called Buckminster Fuller, and he was an architect, but he was an incredibly visionary, and he envisaged, okay, building grids that spanned from the Sahara, okay, to Northern Europe. There's a company in the UK planning to build a 6 megawatt interconnect between Morocco and landing somewhere down on the Devon coast. And they're going to have wind and solar in the deserts in Morocco and export it back up into the UK. I remember reading 15 or 20 years ago about an organization of, I don't know who the hell they are, but they call themselves the Club of Rome. And they were looking at this as a way of introducing wealth into poorer countries in North Africa, bringing the electricity across the Mediterranean and feeding it up through. So I think my fridge needs to be more intelligent. My fridge, okay, says that my meat and, well, sorry, I don't eat meat. Okay, my pizzas are stored at minus 15 degrees Celsius. Well, they're perfectly safe at minus 13 degrees Celsius if the electricity has got a high carbon content. So my fridge needs to be intelligent. So we need to start off by telling people what the price of electricity is. And whenever I say the price of electricity, I mean the carbon content, because those two are interchangeable. We need our cars to be aware of it. We need our clothes dryers to be aware of it. We need our heating systems to be aware of it. And I think that's the first thing. We need to move our load. And I have a terror. I'm afraid of one thing. I'm terrified of one thing. And that is that the government sponsors some technology because they see 13% of our electricity being wasted. And they say, we will give it to you for free to generate hydrogen or to store it in a battery. I don't care. And I think that's a huge mistake. What we need to do is we need to create a market for it. So I have no problem with anybody creating a market for anything. And if someone can create a market for hydrogen, you know, and pay 4 cents, 6 cents, whatever the market rate is, and are prepared to go out of the market if the price is higher than that, I'm all in favor of that. We should put in something that prevents the market going to zero, because going to zero breaks the wind energy sector, and we need to add wind energy. Long answer to a short question. Thanks, Shirley.
Thank you, Jerry. Eugene McCabe, you've put up your hand to speak. Are you going to speak about the second life batteries? Shane, can you unmute Eugene?
He's unmuted there now. I should be able to speak.
Okay. Have you looked at using second life batteries? So for instance, batteries that have been previously used in like data center backups for battery power, they're significantly more cost effective, and there's a very large supply of them.
So Eugene, I'm going to actually answer that. That's one of our innovation funds. We're currently doing it at the minute, and there's a lot of hiccups with the innovation fund. So I don't think it's as simple, and it is lithium ion. and it's not as simple, but feel free to tell us more if you like.
So, Jerry, there's WiseTech in Cork. There's a quite large supply of lithium-ion battery packs there. If you want to try something around storing energy using some of those, that would be an interesting thing to try. The packs are actually already constructed. They have the battery management systems in them. They're all set up. They've got all the monitoring, everything. It's a matter of finding a good use for them. And since they've been used as a backup in a data center, they haven't actually got many cycles on them, unlike an electric vehicle battery that's been charged and discharged every day for a couple of years. So they're readily available, large quantities, already nicely packaged. And there's like I said, a very large supply of them. If you're interested, we should make contact and have a discussion.
Eugene, I'm incredibly interested. I'm easy to track down. JS
I
and
know,
CIX. There you go, Eugene.
I know how to find you.
Yeah, brilliant. Let's have a conversation tomorrow. Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah, WiseTech's one of our Circulera customers. So Eugene, you're coming in from the States, yeah?
Yeah,
Sean and I are good
I moved away many years ago, but I'm still involved with WiseTech.
Cool. Pat's been my contact, Pat Hickey.
Yeah,
various,
absolutely.
Various ones. So I'm actually going to close because I'd like to close on time if we can. Dennis, and thank you, Eugene. And Dennis Duff has said, having an effort for emissions reductions while excluding nuclear energy is like asking them to tackle COVID without using vaccines. How confident are you that we'll reach emission targets soon enough using only current policy technologies? And great app, Donal, best of luck with it. So who'd like to tackle that?
Well, I suppose on that, I mean, if you look at, there's a European website which looks at the carbon intensity of generation throughout Europe. France is consistently green. It's, it's red if you're highly carbon intensive. France is green because of nuclear and because of all the problems with gas. Not good news for us in the gas industry, but France have decided they're going to build nuclear, more nuclear fleet, or replace their existing nuclear fleet because they're isolated from these price shocks. Just before you go, maybe just to answer some of the things Jerry said. I mean, nobody disagrees, Jerry. The idea that we match supply and demand, we're definitely going to have to do that. It's much easier, I would argue, for us as individuals to do that. Everyone individually is a very flexible user. Like you in CIX, I'm sure you have a set demand. You're not very flexible. You need to use that electricity to run your servers, whether the wind is blowing or not. But we as individuals, or millions of us as individuals, we can turn off the lights, we can turn off the TV, we can switch down our fridge, not do our washing. So I think definitely not only Ireland, but the energy system throughout the world are missing a trick here. Demand side management should not be targeted at industrial users who are inherently inflexible, but at individuals. Now, how you do that, Donal Daly's app is a start, but we need a lot more of that. And I think that's the answer. I think that's what you're looking at here. We could have a long discussion about green hydrogen. We'll do that on another day.
Donal, yeah, you're absolutely right. Denver Blemmings is actually on the call, so I was waiting for demand side management to be raised. But we've got 2 minutes to go, so I'm going to ask parting words.
I think just following on from Donal Kissane's thing, I mean, the most efficient energy usage is the energy you choose not to consume. And that's the same with the trip you choose not to take or the clothes you choose not to buy. That's not putting all the responsibility on the individual, because the businesses have a role to play. Government has a role to play. If I want to make my house more efficient, I need the government to help me with systems and have the resources for the retrofitting people and all those kind of things. But I think it's not asking people to be hair shirt. I think it's asking people to be deliberate and considered about everything that they consume, from energy to the food, to the clothes they buy and the trips they take.
and
Yeah.
they can measure on your app at Carbon Watch. Oh no, that Future Planet.
Future Planet, it's there, it's free, go do it, help us all.
Right. Thank you. A round of applause for Jerry Sweeney, Donal Daly, Donal Kissane, and Shane Hartigan. Well done.
And
Thank you, guys.
And thank
Well
you,
done.
Shirley.
Well done to Donal Daly and the app. Well done, Donal.
Good man, Donal.
Great.